Under Zhang Yi's urging, everyone in the family was also working hard to improve. However, now that everyone's ability index had reached the elite team member and captain levels, the differences in their talents became apparent. Although Zhang Yi had a large amount of mutant beasts' origins in his hands, there were huge differences in the efficiency with which different people absorbed them. Among everyone, Liang Yu's talent was unsurprisingly high. Her base stats were too high, and her conversion rate for absorbing the origins of mutant beasts was also very high. In fact, after returning from Qinling Mountain, her ability index had reached 9,700 points. This was the result of absorbing 2 captain-level mutant beasts and Qing Lanlan's origin. Considering her enhancement attributes in close combat, if she were allowed to get close, she could even kill an epsilon-level mutant in seconds. Even Zhang Yi didn't dare to completely let his guard down when facing Liang Yu, because every day when the two of them trained together in the stadium, Zhang Yi would get beaten up pretty badly by her. Later, after Zhang Yi's careful guidance, her strength slowly reached the threshold of 9,800 points, and thus, the speed at which she absorbed the origins of mutant beasts gradually slowed down. Although Zhang Yi could have used the origins of the mutant beasts in his hands to forcibly increase her combat effectiveness in a short period of time, this method was not cost-effective and would have been counterproductive. Zhang Yi was a thrifty person, so he did not intend to do so. In addition, Flower's ability index had reached 9,999 points, just one step away from a complete breakthrough. After taking the Source of God, his genetic limitations had been unlocked, so in theory, he was the most talented person in the shelter apart from Zhang Yi. As long as he continued to fight and stimulate his potential, he would sooner or later reach the threshold of Epsilon. Apart from the two of them, the other companions in the shelter also received huge upgrades. Uncle Yu's ability index surpassed the threshold of the deputy captain level and reached 8,100 points. He was not satisfied with this data because Zhang Yi had spent a lot of materials on him. It took 3-level captain-level mutant beasts' origins to allow him to reach this level. The further he went, the more difficult it became to improve. Uncle Yu sighed and said to Zhang Yi, "My limit may be here. It's true that hard work can make you stronger. But in order to reach the top in a certain field, you still need talent." Zhang Yi smiled and consoled him, "Don't worry, Fatty didn't get fat overnight. Maybe you need to digest these powers slowly. I was too impatient, eager to make you guys stronger." Hearing this, Fatty Sue, who was not far away, was not happy. "Boss, you guys can say what you want, but don't always talk to me in a sarcastic tone." As he spoke, he kept looking down at his game. Zhang Yi and Uncle Yu leaned over to take a look. "Hey, he's still playing online with someone else." Uncle Yu chuckled, and Zhang Yi and Uncle Yu exchanged glances, both with a hint of amusement in their eyes. "Who are you playing with?" the two asked, knowing full well the answer. Fatty Sue blushed and said, "That. I have a friend." "A friend, my ass." At a time like this, he was still hiding it. Who else could he play games with besides Li Yangyang? Zhang Yi asked with a hint of gossip, "How are you two doing now? Didn't you break up? Why are you still together?" Fatty Sue jumped up and down and said, "What do you mean, broke up? I told you, I'm not talking to her. It's just, I think she's a nice person. It's nice to get along with her as a friend." Zhang Yi snorted, "Sure, as long as you don't take the final step, you can just hypnotize yourself into thinking she's a pretty girl." "Ah!" Before Zhang Yi could finish, Fatty Sue immediately covered his ears with both hands and ran away. Sure enough, he had taken the phrase escape as shameful but useful to the extreme. Anyway, he was just numbing himself and escaping reality. Zhang Yi didn't bother with him. He would deal with his own emotional issues. However, due to Li Yangyang's stimulation, Fatty Sue had indeed undergone some changes. On the surface, he said he didn't like effeminate boys, but he was much more enthusiastic when training. Now, with Zhang Yi's cramming-style help, his ability index had reached 8,000 points. Zhang Yi didn't say who it was for, but everyone knew. Fat nerds are such complicated creatures. Apart from them, Yang Xinxin's ability index had also reached 9,000 points. She didn't seem to be very enthusiastic about becoming stronger. Those with rules category abilities relied on their brains rather than their abilities alone. She preferred to be the woman behind Zhang Yi, coordinating everything for him and offering advice. In comparison, Zhou Qi was more concerned with improving her strength. She was a doctor and Zhang Yi's health manager. The stronger she became, the more Zhang Yi's health and safety would be guaranteed. As an ability user with support abilities, she didn't need to gain experience through combat. She only needed to repeatedly practice her abilities, heal others, or conduct experiments on microorganisms to improve the accuracy of her abilities. Therefore, she didn't fall behind and also reached the 9,000-point threshold to become a captain. It was through this kind of practice that her abilities finally exploded. A new ability, body modification. Simply put, she could change the physical qualities of living beings by touching them. This gave her a certain amount of lethality. In theory, anyone whose body she touched could be manipulated at her will. She could distort flesh and destroy internal organs. However, as a non-combatant, she rarely had the opportunity to use this ability and could only use it at special moments. However, the ability of body modification proved to be very useful when helping her teammates. She was able to help Zhang Yi achieve the perfect physique. Now, Zhang Yi's physical qualities are comparable to a beta-level enhancement mutant. This is a huge improvement for Zhang Yi. Although it cannot allow him to fight epsilon-level mutants in close combat. However, the improvement in his basic physical fitness will increase his endurance and allow him to cope with many complex environments. For example, if Zhang Yi fights a mutant of the same level and his strength is exhausted in the latter stages of the fight, at this time, the superiority of his physical fitness will be reflected. Whoever can hold on longer will have the last laugh. Relatively speaking, Yang Xia's supernatural abilities were improving at a steady pace. Her natural talent was not particularly high, and even with the same treatment as Zhou Qi, she had only reached a level of 8,000 points. However, this little woman is content with the status quo. To her, ability index is just a way to make her food more delicious and fill Zhang Yi's stomach. What really surprised Zhang Yi was Lu Karen. Her ability index shot up to 9,500 points in one go. In order to help Zhang Yi study the spirit of sacrifice, Lu Karen inevitably absorbed some of it herself. She didn't know that this had a subtle effect on her. In addition, Zhang Yi never kept anything from Lu Karen and always treated her as a precious source of knowledge, nurturing her with care. As a result, Lu Karen's ability index skyrocketed, stopping at 9,500 points. This rate of improvement shocked even Zhang Yi. This meant that Lu Karen's own capacity had changed again. Perhaps it could be said that her potential limit had been raised. When a mutant reached their own limit, they were like a kettle filled with water. No matter how much more origin they absorbed, they would not improve any further, or their progress would be extremely slow. If Zhang Yi hadn't distributed some of the Source of God to everyone earlier, it wouldn't have been easy for them to reach the 9,000-point threshold. Lu Karen, on the other hand, had accidentally come into contact with the even more mysterious spirit of sacrifice. Zhang Yi had considered this, but if Lu Karen had undergone such obvious changes after absorbing only a small amount of the spirit of sacrifice, then what about him? Zhang Yi thought back to the strange changes in his body recently and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. Put that aside. Lu Karen's increase in strength was great news for Zhang Yi. With the help of Uncle Yu and Fatty Su, she built a huge furnace in the basement. It could quickly smelt yuan ore and extract the purest yuan material. This stuff was similar to coal, but also somewhat close to metal, although it did not release energy through combustion. Fortunately, the Xinjiang region had done research in advance and provided Zhang Yi with instructions on how to use it. Therefore, Lu Karen was soon able to extract the energy from yuan stone and apply it in the industrial field. She said confidently to Zhang Yi, "Brother, give me 2 months at most, and I'll be able to build the upgraded second-generation exoskeleton armor. When that time comes, you'll definitely have even stronger combat power." The little girl's face was flushed red as she looked at Zhang Yi, as if she could already see him wearing the armor, flying through the skies and diving into the earth. Zhang Yi had seen the first generation of battle armor created by Lu Karen, and only Uncle Yu had worn it. Overall, the appearance was already very good. It was made of titanium alloy and weighed only about 20 kilograms. However, because it needed to carry compressed fuel and weapons, the whole set weighed more than 60 kilograms. This was obviously not suitable for Zhang Yi at the time. Now, with Zhou Keir's modifications to Zhang Yi's body, wearing 60+ kilograms of battle armor would not be too much of a strain. But obviously, the lighter and more resilient it was, and the more flexible the joints were, the better. With Lu Karen's increased strength and the new energy source, he would soon be able to build the second generation of armor. "Brother, I will carefully craft the best suit of armor for you. If it can be made entirely from the best metal and equipped with new weapons and equipment, then wearing this armor will give an ordinary person the strength of a high-level Delta mutant. Wearing it will make you even more powerful." Zhang Yi's eyes lit up as he listened. That would be wonderful. Men have a kind of obsession with armor. This was especially true of Zhang Yi. Although he was passionate about weapons, he liked armor that covered his entire body even more. This way, his biggest concern, close combat defense, was also well taken care of. Unless he encountered a top-level master skilled in close combat, such as Lian Yu, a mutant, it was difficult for ordinary mutants to break through his defenses. Even the best combat suits in the region were difficult to withstand the attacks of Epsilon-level mutants. With Lu Karen's current abilities, the exoskeleton armor she was creating was already moving in that direction. Maybe one day, she would be able to create armor comparable to that of an Epsilon-level mutant. Zhang Yi looked at Lu Karen as if he were looking at a huge treasure with unlimited potential. He secretly thought to himself that he must find a way to get Lu Karen a source of God in the future. As for the spirit of sacrifice, it also seemed to have the effect of enhancing potential. He just didn't know how effective it was compared to the source of God, or how they were connected to each other. In less than a month, Zhang Yi received news from Xinjing. The excavation of Yuan ore had begun again. There was no movement from the mysterious beings in the underground world, so Xinjing sent many worthless miners to begin clearing the abyss area and conducting exploratory excavations. Only after confirming that there were no accidents would they proceed with large-scale mining. Now, with the destruction of the Earth Centipede clan, the mining progress could be accelerated. The Jiangnan region held 30% of the resources, so it had to send people to supervise the distribution of the yuan ore while also sending people down to work. After much thought, Zhang Yi called Gao Tianwu, who had been training at the Chaoyu base. Now, Gao Tianwu's ability index was less than 5,000 points, which was considered strong among ordinary people. But in reality, he couldn't even meet the requirements to join the investigation team. However, there was one thing that made Zhang Yi think highly of him. That was his youth, ambition, and sense of responsibility. Zhang Yi considered himself an ordinary person, neither good nor bad. But Gao Tianwu was willing to give up some personal interests for the sake of the villagers, so he could also be considered a good person. That's right, people always like to use good people and are willing to believe in them. However, it seems that no one wants to be a good person, which is a bit ironic. Gao Tianwu went to the Chaoyu base and performed very well. Although he was actively becoming stronger, he also developed some of his own subordinates. However, he did a good job with Zhang Yi's arrangements and cooperated well with Lu Dehai and Qin Jingguan. Zhang Yi decided to give him a chance to be solely responsible for a project. So he decided to let him take a few brothers to the Qinling Mountains to supervise the collection of yuan ore. And Zhang Yi asked Gao Tianwu, going to Xinjing is not a difficult task, and there are even some perks. However, it is far away and remote, so you need to establish good relations with the local organizations. In addition, Blizzard City will also send people there. You are one of my men, so they won't give you too much trouble with my name behind you. But after all, you are an outsider, so you may suffer some small losses or be alienated. Zhang Yi said with a smile, if you encounter any minor problems, you have to deal with them yourself. Don't report every little thing to me. I'm sending you there to do a good job, and it's best not to cause any trouble for me. Of course, we won't cause trouble, and we're not afraid of trouble. If anyone dares to mess with my interests, just let me know. No matter who they are, I'll make sure they pay dearly. After listening to Zhang Yi, Gao Tianwu immediately said, I understand everything. Thank you, Boss Zhang, for giving me this opportunity. I will work hard and not disappoint you. Zhang Yi said indifferently, you are good at everything, but your strength is a little lacking. Have you been practicing your shooting lately? Gao Tianwu hurriedly replied, I dare not slack off. I am now in charge of a team, and I practice diligently every day. For ordinary people and lower-level mutants, firearms are still a great threat. Zhang Yi took out a piece of Earth Centipede's origin from the dimensional space. Although it was not captain level, it was still 7,000 to 8,000 in strength. Here is a mutant beast origin. Take it and absorb it to improve your strength as quickly as possible. This time, bring 10 mutants from Chaoyu base. In addition, every month, you can take as many Yuan stones as you need. These are for your daily needs and to exchange for supplies. I will have the Deng family provide you with medicines so that you can improve your strength as quickly as possible. Zhang Yi made thorough arrangements for Gao Tianwu and the others. It wasn't that he wanted to control everything, but Tianhai City's combat strength was currently too weak. Even the most powerful leaders of the 3 major bases hadn't reached the level of captain. With the strength of Gao Tianwu and his brothers, they would be laughed at if they went to Ghost Valley. At least they had to be made stronger to save face for Zhang Yi. They didn't need to be too strong, but at least they had to be presentable. Gao Tianwu was dumbfounded for a moment, as if a huge pie had suddenly fallen from the sky and hit him on the head. Zhang Yi had always been very generous to the people around him and would never treat anyone unfairly. However, even the little that slipped through his fingers was too much for Gao Tianwu. He excitedly pounded his chest and said loudly, Big brother Zhang, you have placed your trust in me, and I will never forget your kindness. I will go to Xingjing and will definitely not bring shame upon your name. Zhang Yi smiled faintly, I don't care what you say, I want to see what you do. It's a long way to go, and you'll have to think about everything yourself when the time comes. I only care about the results. If you don't do well, I'll find someone to replace you. Gao Tianwu nodded, I understand. He clenched his fists tightly, feeling that immense wealth was right before his eyes. He also knew that leaving his comfort zone would bring many troubles. He and his men were not strong enough, and they were going to work in the most powerful region, where they would surely be looked down upon and even harassed. But he had to grit his teeth and endure it all. As long as he could get through it, he would be considered a success. By then, he would have a brighter future than the 3 leaders of the major bases in Tianhai City who were just scraping by and waiting to die. After all, Zhang Yi's attitude towards the 3 major bases was very casual. He just let them fend for themselves and didn't interfere too much. But Yuan Or was a property that Zhang Yi valued greatly. If he did a good job, he would become a high-ranking official, and Zhang Yi would surely support him in the future. Gao Tianwu was overjoyed and excitedly left with the things Zhang Yi had given him. He only had 1 day to organize his team. The next day, he would set off for Blizzard City, then follow the people there to Ghost Valley. Gao Tianwu left. He was going to the northern border, where he would stay for a long, long time in that even colder valley. Zhang Yi watched him leave the shelter. He walked far, far away in the snow, leaving a long trail of footprints on the ground. But after a certain distance, he stopped, turned back, and bowed deeply to Zhang Yi, who was watching him from the window. Zhang Yi smiled faintly, leaned against the window, and waved his hand toward the coffee table a dozen meters away. A cup of coffee on the coffee table flew towards him, swaying and landing unsteadily in Zhang Yi's hand, almost spilling the coffee. Zhang Yi took a sip of coffee and said lightly, although I can actively collect objects, my control seems to be a little poor. Moreover, I can't actively absorb human bodies, which is very strange. The improvement of the ability index meant that the degree to which his abilities had been unlocked had increased. His ability to collect objects from dimensional space had become stronger and wider in range, and he now had the ability to actively snatch and absorb objects. After some experimentation, he could now even uproot the entire shelter from the ground and absorb it into his dimensional space. However, there were still limitations. It had no effect on humans. Zhang Yi had experimented on many different objects and found that he could actively absorb ordinary living and non-living things, as well as microorganisms. However, there were two exceptions. One was organisms with supernatural abilities. The other was humans. They seemed to possess a special power that counteracted Zhang Yi's space, preventing him from absorbing them at will. Zhang Yi drank his coffee and took a book about the snowy plateau out of his dimensional space with his other hand. Recently, Pa Jigsan had contacted Zhang Yi twice. Both times, he asked Zhang Yi to go to the snowy region to participate in the Dharma assembly the following year. In order to impress Zhang Yi, he also sent him some photos and videos. Zhang Yi saw the towering Great Snow Mountain, which suddenly burst into a dazzling green and golden Buddha light on a dim afternoon, like a golden wool covering the mountain top. Zhang Yi did not tell Pa Jigasang whether he would go or not, but just kept Pa Jigasang hanging. He was thinking about how much he could gain from this trip. But clearly, the changes in Star Island reminded him that staying in Tianhai City was no longer safe. He must work hard to become stronger and figure out the origin of those powerful and mysterious underground creatures. Over in the East Sea, there were signs of movement. Even from a great distance, Zhang Yi could detect it. Zhang Yi knew very well that it was the East Sea region or other large forces that had taken action. They must have gone deep into the fog and encountered unknown creatures. However, none of this had anything to do with Zhang Yi, and he would not risk his life. Right now, he had more important things to do. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. It was February of the year 2053 in the planetary calendar. More than 2 years had passed since the beginning of the apocalypse. At the shelter, Lu Karen was busy with two things. She was perfecting her exoskeleton armor and building an Earth centipede farm. The Earth centipede farm was built next to the shelter. With the help of Uncle Yu and Fatty Sue, she dug a huge cave 200 meters underground. After all, these creatures lived underground and had certain requirements for the temperature of their living environment. Although they weren't fragile creatures, in order to ensure the smooth construction of the farm, it was necessary to breed these hard-won and possibly only remaining Earth centipede eggs with high quality. In addition, steel-reinforced concrete and some metal were needed to build cages to prevent these creatures from escaping after they grew up. Now, Lu Karen's ability index was as high as 9,500 points, and her ability to refine materials had greatly improved. Therefore, she could produce large amounts of metal, so this material was no problem at all. Zhou Ke naturally helped with guidance on the construction of the farm. As underground mutant creatures, Earth centipedes were able to survive in the harsh environment after the apocalypse and were extremely resilient, so there was no need to worry about them not hatching. However, after hatching, it was necessary to consider how to break their wild nature and turn them into livestock that would simply provide origin for the mutants. Zhou Ke gave constructive guidance. Start screening them after they hatch. Kill the overly aggressive ones and only keep the docile ones. They need sufficient food and a comfortable living environment, and any fighting between them must be severely punished. If this continues, they will lose their fighting nature. Even if their origin continues to grow stronger, they will lose their ability to fight. Lu Karen rested her chin on her hand, unsure. They are mutant beasts after all, and their animal nature is difficult to tame. What if they erupt one day? It will be impossible to control them. I will continue to reinforce this breeding farm to prevent accidents. Zhou Ke said with a smile, "Don't worry, I have a way to deal with this kind of problem. We just need to inject them with drugs to weaken their limbs starting from the egg stage. We'll also add a large amount of hormones to their daily feed. That will be safe. Anyway, all we need is their origin. The rest of their bodies don't matter." Lu Karen glanced at Zhou Ke, who was smiling beside her in her white coat, and suddenly shivered. "Sister Zhou, why do I suddenly find you so scary?" Hearing this, Shokir raised her head and shifted her gaze from the notebook where she was recording the experiment to the ceiling. Really? But doctors and butchers are quite similar. Anyone who has seen surgery knows this. Lu Karen smiled. Anyway, I'm only responsible for building the breeding farm. As for the later stages of breeding, I'll leave that to you, Uncle Yu, and Brother Su. At this moment, Uncle Yu and Fatty Su were wearing full protective suits and checking the condition of the earth centipede eggs in the breeding farm. Shokir and Lu Karen were responsible for the technical work, while the physical labor was naturally left to them. The earth centipede breeding plan proceeded as planned. For Zhang Yi, the thing he was most looking forward to was the mecha project that Lu Karen had been thinking about for nearly 2 years, which had finally made a major breakthrough. On this day, Lu Karen mysteriously called Zhang Yi to her workshop. Now, there were more than a dozen rooms in the underground workshop prepared for Lu Karen. After all, there was no need for warehouses here, so there was a lot of space. Lu Karen took Zhang Yi with her and opened a tightly closed alloy door. Brother, I've been researching mecha for so long, and I've finally created the most perfect one. I believe you will like it. Before opening the door, Lu Karen looked at Zhang Yi with confidence and said proudly. Mechas originally existed only in science fiction movies. However, for nearly a century, the military forces of various countries had been researching them and secretly applying them to military purposes. However, due to various issues such as cost, technology, and functionality, mechas had never officially appeared before the world. Today, Lu Karen had actually solved most of the technical issues. The only problem was solving the energy issue. Large mecha are extremely cost inefficient, even more so than building an armored vehicle with the same materials. However, exoskeletons have taken on a different meaning in the age of mutants. They can be attached to the human body and become part of a person's combat power. Whether for defense, attack, or as a combat support system, they are extremely beneficial to mutants. Zhang Yi looked at the slowly opening laboratory. In the center of the laboratory, a set of black full-body armor stood quietly on the workbench, like a silent beast waiting for its master to wake it up. The black exterior and streamlined shape were filled with extreme beauty. The matte exterior had no reflection and was somewhat simple, but it was extremely advantageous for combat. Even the tactical eyepiece of the helmet did not show a hint of reflection. When Zhang Yi saw it for the first time, he thought, black? Won't that be too obvious? Lu Karen quickly said, it has a built-in chameleon system that can optically cloak itself according to the surrounding environment. You can also control its color independently. Zhang Yi nodded in satisfaction. He came to the side of the armor and examined it carefully. As it turned out, just by looking at its appearance, it was impossible to tell what its performance was like. It looked quite good, but its appearance gave a thin impression, not as heavy as the mecha he had imagined. Lu Karen stood beside him and carefully introduced its performance to Zhang Yi. I named this mecha Submarine Dragon. It is the second generation of mecha I have developed. The first generation was tested by Uncle Yu, and its overall performance is already quite good. I built on that foundation and greatly enhanced its performance. First is the weight. With the advent of Yuan material, we were able to reduce the weight of the compressed fuel. Furthermore, with my improved abilities, the performance of E-metal has also been enhanced. Therefore, this exoskeleton mech only weighs 15 kilograms. 15 kilograms might have been a bit heavy for Zhang Yi in the past. However, now that he exercises diligently and his body has been enhanced by Shokir's body modification, this weight is completely bearable for him and doesn't cause him any stress. Zhang Yi stared intently at the armor. Under Lu Karen's control, it changed colors, demonstrating its optical stealth capabilities. When I'm fighting normally, without affecting my movements, I can carry up to 50 kilograms on my back. So you can add another 15 kilograms of weapons and other tools. Just don't exceed 30 kilograms. Lu Karen nodded. Weapons aren't a big problem for you, brother. You can put them in the dimensional space. However, for emergencies, I added a high-energy compression cannon to the wrists. To reduce weight, this is the only weapon, but its attack power is definitely reliable. It's no weaker than your Thunderstrike. So next, I'll add other tools to the armor, such as medicine and spare food. Zhang Yi nodded, very good. He reached out his hand, so, what about the defensive capabilities? Zhang Yi didn't particularly care about attack capabilities. He couldn't expect a suit of armor to give him the ability to fight against epsilon-level enhanced mutants. Therefore, enhancing the defensive capabilities was the most reliable option.